Hello, Frank. I have a very special book for you. You remember this. I'm going to read you the introduction because I'm not reading the fucking book. This tome of arcane knowledge. Oh my god. Okay. Oh, it's great. In 1970, I was in the Sea Islands of South Carolina doing an anthropological fieldwork for my PhD dissertation in a rural black community. I was surprised to learn that sometimes when people were ill, they gathered various wild plants as medicines. I don't know why that would surprise you. As an anthropologist, you should know that people use topicals as medicine. They've been doing it throughout their entire fucking recorded history. Although I had not intended to do so, I began to inquire into the matter. In time, I had identified about 35 species of plants, from allium to xanthoxylum, which were so used. I then asked what seemed to be at the time to be a few simple questions. How had these people learned of these plants? Did it do any good to take them? Had anyone else ever used them? And if so, for what? Native American ethnobotany is the most complete of my several efforts that have resulted from asking those naive questions. And naive they were. Daniel E. Moorman. The book is intended to help anyone interested in the use of plants understand which ones have been used by native North American peoples to treat disease, for food, fiber, and dye, and for many other purposes as well. As I begin this work, I found I was in the company of some of the great American students of ethnobotany in the past. Huron H. Smith, Francis Denmore, Melvin Randolph Gilmore, Matilda Coke Stevenson, Gladys Tankaquidgeon, and many others. Their fascinating works, too often overlooked, were found with the help of references librarians in the recesses of one library or another across the continent. Most of the works have long been out of print or were published in specialist journals and were very hard to find. Fuck you, Frank. Once found, many of these works were difficult to use. Most were not indexed, or at least not very well indexed. To answer seemingly simple questions such as, who used alluvium for what, took hours of digging. I decided to try to coordinate the information. I bought a few hundred index cards, the kind with sorting holes around the edges, and started filing them in. Soon I had more cards than would fit on the sorting pen. I had to start new boxes of subcategories to store the cards. Once I dropped a stack of cards on the floor, it was very discouraging. One day in 1974, I had a chance conversation with Ralph Nichols, then the registrar at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. Among other things, he was responsible for putting out the schedule of classes each term. Course number, name, department, room, time, professor, and so on. He was experimenting with some new system that worked on a computer. It was used for manipulating what he called data banks. I told him what I was doing, and he said I might want to give his system a try. I had played around with the computer a few years earlier and had thought it kind of fun, so I decided I would look into it. Soon I was working with a new kind of card, rectangular ones with a notch in the corner. I transferred the material from one kind of card to the other and started feeding them into the hopper at the computer center. The material was then read into a database using the TAXIR, Taxonomic Information Retrieval System, available on the university computer. Oh my god. In 1975, with a summer stipend from the National Endowment for the Humanities, ladies, I filled out thousands of code sheets with material from the works of Smith, Tankaquidgeon, and others. With funds provided by the university, I hired key punch operators to produce the thousands of cards needed for computing. The first version of the database was published in 1997 as American Medical Ethnobotany, a reference dictionary, parentheses, New York, Garland Publishing, and parentheses, period. That book included 1,288 plant species from 531 genera from 118 families used in 4,869 different ways in 48 different societies. The book was produced from a line printer copy, all in uppercase. Oh, dick. I typed the page numbers on little labels and stuck them on the bottom pages by hand, one at a time. It was crude, but it had its advantages. There was no index, but each of the 4,869 items appeared in the book 4 times. One list organized by genus, one by family, one by use, and one by tribe. Even though that book had more than 500 pages, and this one has 927, it was far from a comprehensive list of Native American medicinal plant use. I had not had time nor resources to code several other available resources. For example, Francis Elmore on the Navajo, Erna Gunther on the Northwest Coast peoples. And at the time, there were no sources available on 2 major groups, the Cherokee and the Iroquois. The cross. Yeah, it's cool. With the help of several reference librarians, I continued to add to my collection of ethnobotanical works, published and unpublished. Paul Hamill and Mary Chiltowski's Cherokee Plants and Their Uses and James Herrick's monumental Iroquois Medicinal Botany appeared later in the 1970s. Parentheses. Those 2 sources alone had more items in them, 4,875, than all the rest of my original database. And the database technology was changing. Personal computers began to show up on desks, supplementing mainframes, and the weakest link in mainframe computer technology, printing was revolutionized by the introduction of laser printers. In 1984, the National Endowment for the Humanities again agreed to support my project with a grant. I established a laboratory at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and students were hired to do the coding. Within 2 years, a new database was constructed on the foundation of the original one. It was published in 1986 as Medicinal Plants of Native America, parentheses, University of Michigan Museum of Anthropology Technical Reports number 19, and parentheses, comma, in 2 volumes with 910 pages, and included 2,147 plant species from 760 genera from 142 families using 17,634 different ways in 123 different societies. The listings were much more readable than the earlier versions because laser printing allowed the use of a variety of fonts. As I continued to work, however, I realized that my database was incomplete in another way. Native American peoples use many species of plants as medicines, but they use many plants for other purposes as well. My mom's home. In particular, for food. Other scholars have begun to recognize that medicinal plants were not completely distinct from food plants. Indeed, there was often a substantial overlap in species that were used for both food and medicine, so I decided to broaden my net. I applied to the National Science Foundation for funds to cover the cost of building a database of American Indian food plants to supplement the existing medicinal plant collection. As I started accumulating new food plant material, I checked again all the original material coded in medicinal plants of Native America. In many of them, I found detailed discussions of food plants that we had passed by in earlier projects. But in addition to the food plants, there was ethnobotanical information on dyes, fibers, and many other uses. The notion of going back over the same material for a 3rd or 4th time seemed silly, so I decided to code everything this time. The result is this book, which includes 4,029 kinds of plant species, subspecies, varieties, and so on, and 1,200 genera from 242 families using 44,691 different ways in 291 different societies. Of the 44,691 uses, 24,945 are medicinal, 11,078 are as food, 2,567 as fibers, 607 as dyes, and 5,494 as other kinds. On a more personal level, my wife Claudine Farrand is a true partner in life. She provided context for this work by making life fun. My daughter Jennifer Mowerman did the illustrations seen throughout the book. She is a wonderful artist and a great friend. There's no illustrations. There's not a single picture. But our deepest debt is to those predecessors of ours on the North American continent who, through glacial cold and a world populated by mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, seriously, deliberately, and thoughtfully studied the flora of a new world, learned its secrets, and encouraged the next generations to study closer and to learn more. Their diligence and energy, their insight and creativity, these are the marks of true scientists, dedicated to gaining meaningful and useful knowledge from a complex and confusing world. That I cannot list them individually by name in no way diminishes my sense of obligation to them.